Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me recognize in our presence Ambassador Bowman, that's Andrea Bowman, who is the ambassador of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and she's also the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps here in Taiwan, Ambassador Bowman. And we want and I want to recognize Professor Lee, and thank you, Professor Lee, for moderating this presentation. But I also want to introduce four other ladies who came with me. My wife, Mrs. Brenda Fannis Lewis, a teacher by profession. Then I want to, I'm being pointed to do the right thing. I recognize my daughter, Saya Lewis. Just to say, Saya just graduated from the University of the West Indies with a degree in psychology. I want to recognize Miss Bernice Springer, the second secretary in the embassy, and the executive assistant at the embassy, Miss Adriana Shu. I'm very honored to have been invited here at National Taiwan University this afternoon. Of course, NTU, I have known about NTU for a long time now, at least some 25 years. Officially because of a friend of mine who studied with me at Cambridge. She is a graduate of NTU, and she's also a professor here at NTU in the Department of Anthropology. Well, I don't know why this word was getting away from me, but that is Professor Wei Ping Lin. She is a professor here, and she did introduce me to Taiwan, and especially NTU, officially way back in 1997 when we were students together. So I have known of NTU, and I know that NTU is the flagship institution in Taiwan. Because in each country, some institutions will automatically be recognized a lot more based on how they have been ranked over the years. And NTU ranks very well in the world. So I'm sure you know that. I'm not really bringing any good news to you that you don't know. NTU ranks in the top 100 universities in the world. And we're talking about a world that has tens of thousands of universities. So you are in a good place by being a student at NTU. And I want to thank the leadership and management of NTU for inviting me here. I have been a teacher all my life. I've taught at every level, from whether it's elementary school. I taught 22 years secondary school, high school mathematics. I've taught at the university level. So every time I come into an institution of higher learning, I'm excited to be here because all my life I have been in school. And I want to thank you for agreeing to be here today, even if you are scheduled to be here, but you agree to be here to listen to me talk about something that you wonder, I wonder if it's going to make any difference to my life. But let me just say thank you for inviting me again. And just to say, universities are exactly what it says, that university is a place where you ought to be able to come and to share views on different areas. Because what you're doing, in the real sense, they say, is you are reading for a degree. So I hope you are reading, meaning that you read very much as a student, because the more you read, the better prepared you are when you are in conversation with other people, because we don't know everything, but there's a lot of stuff that we can know simply by reading. And as undergraduates, I want to just encourage you to read. Read in your field, read outside of your field. So that means in an argument, in a discussion, you can always share a viewpoint. And one of the things I do every day for the last 30 years, I get up, and as someone in Christian faith, I'll do what is called a devotion. And then after that devotion, I'm going to spend about an hour looking to see what has happened in the world while I was asleep. Because the world changes so quickly in less than 24 hours that you need to know. And I have two sources that I generally, I'm not trying to put them, I'm not making them more important, but I look at CNN and I look at what happened in the BBC just to get a sense of what happened. Because these two media houses will take up anything that's happened in the world. So I would make sure I've read by the time it's 7 a.m., I'll have read at least what happened in the world while I was asleep. So I encourage you to read, especially as undergraduates. This afternoon, I was just telling Professor Lee, it's not so much a philosophical discussion as it, for me, having arrived in Taiwan some 8 months ago, and as an educator, a number of issues in education have been brought to my attention, or my own experience. And I thought the best way to handle some of these issues sometimes is when you get an opportunity to speak in an educational setting, it's to raise some issues, to introduce people to your own environment. Because you as young students, what you really need is to understand the world outside of your own. So this afternoon I've captioned my presentation, Challenges in Education in Small Island Developing States. That's what they call SIDS, Small Island Developing States. And I'm looking at it from a Saint Lucian perspective. Saint Lucia, of course, you'll come to realize, for those who don't know, is a small island in the Caribbean. And Dean Bowman, who is here, her island, St. Vincent, and the Grenadine Islands, really, because St. Vincent is not just one island. Of course, you heard St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I'm not sure how many islands are in. My gosh, 32 plus St. Vincent, right? But the point is, she's my neighbor. About 20 minutes by air, my neighbor. But this afternoon, I really want to do 4 things this afternoon. One, for some of you to reintroduce you, but for some of you to introduce you to the Caribbean. How many persons have heard about the Caribbean before? Anybody heard of the Caribbean before? Of course, I'm seeing a few hands. You have to hear about the Caribbean because the Caribbean is a place for cruises. And of course, it's a wonderful place in the world. But I'll tell you more about that. 2, to emphasize the main socio-political characteristics of Saint Lucia as an ally of Taiwan. 3, to highlight the quality of education. Let's keep that out still. To highlight the quality of education system in the English-speaking Caribbean, because the Caribbean has many different languages spoken, French, Dutch, English, Spanish, of course. And finally, I also want to suggest critical ways Taiwan can partner with us as its allies to make sure we can address the climate change action plan. Now, before I really start, I won't be, you won't be going beyond our time. But before I start, I like, as a teacher, to start doing something that most teachers do well. Teachers love to introduce their topic with a little icebreaker. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what is called Guess the Celebrity. I'm going to present you with a photo of somebody, 5 ladies, 5 beautiful ladies, one at a time. I'm going to introduce you to the photo, and I would like very much, if anybody knows who the person is, tell us the person's name and what role was the person playing as of August 31, 2022. Is that clear? So when I show the picture, if you know, you can raise your hand, and I guarantee you'll get a little token from us. You'll get a little token, and the token is just a little flag of Saint Lucia, a little pin. And so once you put your hand up, you tell us. So for example, if I show you this very beautiful young lady seated right in front of me there, and you say Andrea Bowman, and she's ambassador of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to the Republic of China, Taiwan, I give you the flag pin. So let's start. We're not going to waste time. Here's the first photo. Come on. Yes? I beg your pardon? What's her name again? Okay, she's president of the Republic of China, Taiwan. That's true. So we give her a nice mask, and is a pin there also? Yes. Right, good. Let's go. Yes, I see somebody. Nancy Pelosi, and who is she? Did you say senator? We will. She's not a senator, but I think at least you in the general field, she's Speaker of the House of Representatives, and you know she was here just in August, right? Or even before. Was it August? So we'll give the pin. We'll give the pin. Okay, can you just stand so you can be recognized? No, stand so she can take it to you. Thank you very much. And while Miss Springer is doing that, we go to the next photo. I told you it's beautiful women. Only I'm going to show. Yes. Kamala Harris. And who is she? Vice President of the United States of America. Yes. See, I told you. And the guys, notice two young men so far. They love to see the beautiful women. That's good. Come on. Yes, another young man, right? Meghan Markle. Yes, and she is the wife of Prince Henry or Prince Harry, or she's Princess of Sussex, isn't it? Yes, that's fine. Yeah, that's her. I know those of you who are watching the show Suits, you'd have seen her, isn't it? Yes. Right, so last one now. Let's see, there's the last one. Last one. Anybody? Now, I did that deliberately. Let's be honest. You're supposed to know her to some extent, but I know you didn't. You didn't. All right. Okay. Let me. And the Ambassador Bowman is out of it. Bernice is out. Adriana is out. My wife and daughter can try if they want. Anybody? Anyway, this is former ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis to Taiwan, Ambassador Jasmine Huggins. She spent 14 years as ambassador of ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis to Taiwan. Now, why did you think I put her up there? I wanted to show you, just make you realize, part of an education is to engage by following what's happening in the world that you live in, because Ambassador Huggins would have said a lot of things in Taiwan in those 14 years, and you'd have been in high school at that time. And somehow you could have picked up, because the same way we know who the princesses, Queen Elizabeth, we ought to know. And the reason I'm doing this is just to tell you, you are Taiwan's best hope for the future. You are the leaders who are going to take Taiwan into the next stage of its development. And the more you know the people who are engaged with you, the better it becomes for Taiwan. St. Kitts and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Palau, Nauru, Tuvalu, Eswatini, Guatemala, Marshall Islands, Paraguay, okay, Honduras, Haiti. There are 14 countries right now who are allies of Taiwan. And every September, these countries, they stand in the United Nations and they make a plea for Taiwan because there's something they have that they want Taiwan to have. In these countries, each one of these countries has a vote in the United Nations. And they believe Taiwan ought to have a say in the United Nations. In fact, Taiwan should, because one of the good things for you as a country is you, through the COVID pandemic, you have been very instrumental in what you did to protect your people, and you have information that the rest of the world should know about. But you are not given that opportunity because of political circumstances. And so I'm just saying, every time you put your television on, you should make an effort to see what can I learn, even if it's for 10 minutes, because I don't expect most students will want to spend more than half an hour looking at what's happening in the world. But I guarantee you, if you do that, you become some of the best students in the world, because it means you know what's happening in your world. And education must open you up to the world. You cannot compete in only your local setting. You have to compete everywhere. When you are educated, Professor Lee can tell you that, Ambassador Bowman and all those who have graduated before you, your TAs, they will tell you, you are preparing yourself to be on the world stage. And therefore, Taiwan is not the only place you're going to end up working. You might find yourself in many places, and the more you know about the world, the better prepared you are. So let's move on. There's just a quick definition of what they say SIDS are. You can read, I'll just say small island developing states include some of the world's smallest and most remote states. Though they differ in population size, geographical spread, and development progress, they share challenges and vulnerabilities, high exposure to natural disasters, climate change, and global economic shocks, as well as small or unstable domestic revenues and limited borrowing opportunities. Just because they wrote this here, most of these small countries like Tuvalu and St. Lucia and St. Vincent, Taiwan to some extent, but most countries belong to the United Nations. And most countries are part of the IMF, the world system. And these small countries, they will borrow heavily from the IMF. And that's why you see their limited resources, they will come to us for a loan from the IMF or the World Bank. And then let's move on, but this is something you can look to, small island development states. Another, just continue, it says, small island development states face multiple issues and challenges. Most of the pressing and serious challenges are of an environmental nature. Moreover, the greatest challenges are all related to climate change, and these challenges are critical to their sustainable development. You may not always think about, let's say, the Marshall Islands or Nauru, but these countries are under threat because tomorrow they may just not exist because of the actions of humanity. And therefore, it's always important to remember that the world is a beautiful place because of diversity. And therefore, you have, is anybody here from outside of Taiwan? Students, international? Right, thank you for that. And the more international students you have, the better the university is. because it allows you to find people to talk to right in your neighborhood, and you can interact with them. This is the Caribbean. This is a shot of the Caribbean. I'm sure the only reason you see that little one, this little area above there, it's there at the moment, this one right there. Anybody can see that? We know that's Florida, right? Now, most people get a sense of the world and they think, if I see the United States, I think I understand. So the Caribbean, Florida is generally considered in the Caribbean because Florida is bathed by the Caribbean Sea. Of course, this body of water here, in that area, let me see if I can get it. This area here, this whole area here is the Caribbean Sea. On the other side of these countries is the Atlantic Ocean. So anybody who's bathed by the Caribbean Sea, you belong to the Caribbean. And the Caribbean, therefore, is not only islands. Of course, you can see there are countries on Central America and in South America, like Venezuela right here. And then, of course, you'll have Guyana, Suriname, and French Guyana, which we call Cayenne. Of course, again, students in political science, they generally understand. So this is like the Caribbean. So I just wanted to show you what the Caribbean. And generally, when the cruises go from Florida, they start somewhere in Miami, and they will sail maybe to about 3 or 4 countries in the Caribbean. And some people, they have been to the Caribbean, but they do not know because they've never really spent time to think about where is it that I am really going. But not you as students. Students will always know. I just wanted to highlight to you, in the Caribbean, these are Taiwan's allies in the Caribbean. Taiwan has 14 allies as it is right now. 7 of them are in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is one of the most peaceful areas or stable areas in the world. There are many languages, but very peaceful and very democratic area in the world. In fact, all countries like St. Kitts, Saint Lucia, St. Vincent, Belize, if an election happens tonight, tomorrow there's a new government, there is no time for transition, what you're hearing, that it takes a whole month. We believe in democracy, and therefore the government changes over in less than 24 hours, and the countries continue going because we accept the fact that the people decide how they want to be governed. And that's what Taiwan wants. You want to tell the world, we want to make our own decisions on how we are going to be governed. We don't want somebody else to make that decision for us. So there are the allies, and you can just see them: Belize, Honduras, Guatemala, Haiti, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. These are the 7 allies of Taiwan in the Caribbean. So 7 out of 14, 50% of the allies are in that region. Now look at this recent visit of heads of government or heads of state to Taiwan in just the last 5 months. In July, you can see who was here. The Prime Minister of Belize was here in July. In August, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines was here. In September, you had the Prime Minister of Tuvalu and the President of Palau. In October, you had the visit of King Maswati of Kingdom of Eswatini. And just today he's leaving. He's actually still in Taiwan, having a meeting at the ICDF, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Why am I telling you these things? As undergraduate students, you ought to be conscious of your world. There is no room for ignorance among undergraduate students. You will not know everything, trust me. But you must know some things, especially those that relate to you. All these people are coming to see you, and you know why? They're saying, we believe in Taiwan. We believe Taiwan has a right to its own self-determination. That's what they say. So when they arrive, like the king or the prime minister, they're really showing an interest in who you are. I know we have a little song, I Am a Saint Lucian. I may not play the whole song, but I'll begin just to show you what the idea of being a Saint Lucian is all about.
Yeah. Whoa, yeah. I am a Saint Lucian, yeah. That's who I am. Find that place so sweet, melodies in the heat. Everybody's on the road, we jumping for the gold. To any song I play, our culture on a display. Everybody say, we like the special way. To see the people playing, everybody celebrating. The music sounds so sweet, it's only we who feel it. I'm proud of where I'm from, I need you to understand. I am a Saint Lucian, no matter how far I go. Thank God that I am a Saint Lucian, and I come from the land of sun. Thank God for the island of the West, simply beautiful and blessed. Let me see your hands up for I and Lord. Hands up if you don't know where you're from. Hands up, cause all of we are one. Hands up if you are a Saint Lucian. Hands up, every party every day. Hands up, shine people everywhere. Hands up, raise a fire up in the air. If you are a Saint Lucian, I don't know but I cannot explain. We love the culture on every day. It's a feeling we cannot contain. So let we go, go. I love to see people playing, everybody celebrating. The music sounds so sweet, it's only we who feel it. I'm proud of where I'm from, I need you to understand. I am a Saint Lucian, no matter how far I go. Thank God that I am a Saint Lucian, and I come from the land of sun. Thank God.
Yes, I think you get the point. We gave you a little snapshot of some of the cultural images of Saint Lucia. And so it's a song, I'm a Saint Lucian, you can tell. So that's what you call somebody from Saint Lucia. For example, I will call Ambassador Bowman a Vincentian. You will not say Saint Vincentian, you'll say a Vincentian. But the point is, Saint Lucia is, and we can pick it up on the map of the Caribbean, and the map of the Caribbean, it's an island, small island, and that's what the shape, pretty much almost the same shape with Taiwan, almost the same shape with Taiwan. Saint Lucia is situated between Martinique, a French island, and Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. And of course, Saint Lucia has a French background. So I'm going to move. Of course, the profile of Saint Lucia, I just want to quickly tell you. Saint Lucia's capital city is called Castries. Saint Lucia has coordinates 14 degrees north, 61 degrees west, exactly 12 hours behind Taiwan. So right now, it is 4:09 in the morning, Thursday. So I have seen what the world has to offer. I can tell Saint Lucians what happens. So that's where time travel comes. So I have been in Thursday. I can tell my friends, I can tell you what happened. So when you're watching Back to the Future? Yeah, time travel. So Taiwan is 12 hours ahead of Saint Lucia. And that makes it easy for somebody like me who's in Taiwan. I don't have to wonder by doing my calculations. I just say, oh, Saint Lucia is exactly half a day away from me. But yes, it is only 616 square kilometers, or some people say 617 square kilometers, 238 square miles, the same thing. Singapore, I think, is something like 728 square kilometers. So Singapore is just a little bigger than Saint Lucia. What else can I say? Well, I think I may have it there. Saint Lucia, it says it has 3 branches in its government, a legislature, an executive, and a judiciary. Taiwan has 5 branches. So these 3 that I'm showing here, plus Taiwan has a control yuan and an examination yuan. And our country has the same thing, but Taiwan is more specific in that it's saying we want these 2 additional ones to have their own way in our constitution. King Charles III is the head of state of Saint Lucia. He's represented in Saint Lucia by a Governor General. The present Governor General is Errol Charles. There are really 2 political parties in Saint Lucia. The Saint Lucia Labour Party, founded in 1950, and the United Workers' Party, founded in 1964. Now, a democracy needs political parties. You cannot have one political party in a democracy. It is no longer a democracy, really. Democracy thrives on competition because people must have choice when it comes to democracy. Freedom of religion, whatever your rights are on as a human being, democracy thrives by people respecting your rights. So if you have one political party, it's not good. So sometimes it's good to have 3, 4, 5, as many as possible. Give people a choice. In fact, in some books that I'm reading says, in the United States, for example, people are the ones who choose the most powerful man or woman in the world. And sometimes the people who have a right to vote, they give up that right. They say, I'm not voting. But what you've done, you've given up your right to choose your leader when you don't vote. That's what you're really saying. People have died for people to vote. So when you get a chance to cast a ballot, do it, and do it wisely. It doesn't matter. You're right. It's your right. You can choose which candidate you want, but that's your right, because there are people in the world who don't have that right. The Prime Minister of Saint Lucia is Philip J. Pierre. He has been Prime Minister since July 20th, 2021. He's been to Taiwan. And he will be in Taiwan later this month. Saint Lucia is a small country, I told you. Only 184,000 people. That's small. And remember, there are towns in Taiwan, that's just the people who live on one street, right? But Saint Lucia is a small country. The official language is English. We speak a French Creole. And of course, if you were conversant in it, I would have spoken to you. But I won't do that now. But I'll tell you, it's just like French, like bonjour, ça qu'a fait. Ça qu'a fait simply means how are you, and so on. The main religion in St. Lucia is Christianity. 62% of our population is Roman Catholic. The Roman Catholic Church at one time when I grew up was about 95% of the population. 29% are Protestant, meaning if you're not Roman Catholic and you're Christian, you are Protestant, because it is, what is it that you're protesting? Well, then you have the Eastern Caribbean dollar is the currency for St. Lucia and 7 other islands in the Caribbean that St. Vincent is a part of. And the rate of exchange you can see there, $1 US is $2.70 in our Eastern Caribbean dollar. So XCD means Eastern Caribbean dollar. That's the international code for Eastern Caribbean dollar, the same way USD is the US dollar. Yours is the NT. So that means $1 US is 32 NT. Therefore, 1 EC dollar is $11.85 NT. This is just, what is St. Lucia known for? You see these majestic pitons, and I'm making a plea for you to go and visit. I will give you, any of you who decide to go, I'm actually going to find, and Bernice already said, yeah, we'll give it. We're going to find an accommodation for you. I'm making you can go and see these magnificent pitons. They are World Heritage Sites. They have been classified as World Heritage Sites since 2004 by UNESCO. So that means the government and the people of Saint Lucia cannot just do what they want with these. They have to abide by certain restrictions that UNESCO is going to put in place. I'm sure Taiwan has UNESCO World Heritage Site, no? But most parts of the world have areas where UNESCO is the United Nations Education and Scientific and Cultural Organization. It will designate some natural phenomena as World Heritage, and it means they say that belongs to us. It belongs to all people of the world. You cannot do what you want with it. That is what we call the pitons, Go Piton and Piti Piton. Go means big in Creole. Piti means small. So they are really lovely, and it's not just the pictures. You have to see it for yourself. So these are iconic landmarks. I would just play maybe 30 seconds of the next song for you, just so you can get a sense. We're trying to get you to go to Saint Lucia. We are. You see them?
Go to the detours, chill with the breeze, go baby, and I wanna ride on the East Coast. Bad Lucia, let me goes. I wanna do you. Come on, up me like a cheat code. I can pack it up and you can move it like a vehicle. Come to town, I'll take you around. Pretty Saint Lucia. Come to town, I'll take you around. Pretty Saint Lucia. Going bars on the beat, swimming in super. Sipping on Germans and cranberry, got a couple of nights on the way. Take the land by the island breeze, listen to the ocean speak. Bet you say you're never gonna leave. I'm in town, I take you out, pretty Saint Lucia. It's my town, I'ma take you out, pretty Saint Lucia. Pretty Saint Lucia. Come to town, I'll take you around, pretty Saint Lucia. Come to town, I'll take you around, pretty Saint Lucia.
Thank you very much. So far, my assistants are doing a wonderful job. But I thought in just a while, I'll say some things about some of the areas you saw there, because I think you saw the pitons, you saw what we call the sulfur springs. It's a natural geothermal area, and of course a lot of sulfur. And you know, those who are doing the sciences know the importance of sulfur in a lot of things. Saint Lucia is also known by two gentlemen who have received Nobel Prizes, two Saint Lucians. The gentleman on the right here, or I should say on your left, this one here, he's Sir Arthur Lewis. Sir Arthur Lewis is a Saint Lucian economist. He died, of course, in 1991, but he got the Nobel Prize for economics in 1979, the very same year Saint Lucia became independent. And you could imagine a small island, we became independent, and then where Saint Lucian economist gets a Nobel Prize. That was a sense of pride for Saint Lucia. And Arthur Lewis is the first, he studied at University of London. In fact, it's London School of Economics. My apologies. London School of Economics. And then he was offered a PhD to do industrial economics at LSE. And he is the first black professor in the United Kingdom. Most countries, a lot of countries have used his economic theory to push the development. And therefore, Arthur Lewis is a very important person to us. He was a professor, the first professor again at University of Manchester. And there's a joke in England, those who follow football, I'm a big Liverpool fan, okay? Liverpool football fan. But Liverpool and Manchester United have this rivalry going on. Everybody knows that, right? Some of you. Manchester United and Liverpool. So at the time, Sir Arthur was a student at LSE. LSE asked Liverpool to take him as a professor. And Liverpool says, no, we don't want him. And Manchester United say, thank you very much, we'll have him. And they say, even up to today, when it was 100 years, Manchester reminded the world, we took Arthur Lewis, which Liverpool didn't want. So even in football, while there's rivalry, in the world of academia, there's also rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester. The second individual is Sir Derek Walcott. Sir Derek Walcott is a Nobel Prize winner, Saint Lucian, and he got that prize in 1992 for literature. So if you are interested in these names, you can look up. Fortunately for me, I ride on their reputation because I went to the same high school with them. The high school I went to is founded in 1890. It's an all-boys high school, St. Mary's College. And it has produced some of St. Lucia's and the world's, some of the best people who have gone out. That's why I say to you, NTU's reputation is only going to be held by you. NTU has been here for a while, but its reputation will be enhanced by what you do in the world after you leave NTU. That's how schools make their names. Because the people who have been there, they are going to be told, somebody's going to say, oh, he went to NTU. And that's why it's important for you to make your contribution. So Sir Arthur, we celebrate them every year. Oh, amazingly, I should tell you, these gentlemen are born on the same day. Not the same year, of course. January 23rd, they were born. Both of them, one in 1915, and I think the other guy, my wife knows, 1930. 15 years apart, but the same date, January 23rd. Now, natural vulnerabilities and challenges in the Caribbean. Of course, we have what we call hurricanes. You have what you call typhoons. It's the same thing, but it depends on where you are in the world, how they're going to call it. So we are very vulnerable. The hurricane season begins from June 1 right through November 30th every year. And in some years, these countries can go back by losing about 60, 70, 80, 90% of their GDP. For example, in 2017, Dominica was struck by Hurricane Maria, and it was totally devastated, about 90% of its GDP. Saint Lucia has been affected every year, but these are the 4 biggest disruptions to Saint Lucia's economy in the last 30, 40 years. Hurricane Allen, Tropical Storm Debbie in 1994, Hurricane Thomas in 2010, billions of dollars worth of damage, and the Christmas trough of 2013. Now, the reason I put that here, I was Minister for Education when the Christmas trough of 2013 struck St. Lucia. And what that meant is school children, a lot of schools were destroyed with the water, damage of water. And we had to come to say, what are we going to do for all these children who lost their books and everything? And the government of St. Lucia very quickly said, every primary school child who lost books will get $700. This is the best we could do. Every secondary school student who lost their book got $1,000. And every student at the tertiary level got $1,500. Because the government must try to meet the needs very quickly. And so the Ministry of Education was responsible for giving out that money. That's why you see I put it here, but it really was destruction. Water, just water. In fact, Belize was just hit by Hurricane Lisa, And there is a plea from Belize to its allies and friends to make contributions. The world depends on all of us to work together. Saint Lucia was hit with water 2 days ago also, or 3 days. But I think Belize, if you are thinking about making a contribution, you're not going to have lunch for the next week, you can make that contribution to Belize. If you want to know how you can do that, I can let you know at the end. But these are realities, and Taiwan, of course, is affected too. I mean, those from the Philippines know. People in the Philippines tell me what happened last week in the Philippines. People lose their children, their property, and so on. Let me just quickly move. Let's move very quickly now to get to. The Saint Lucia education system is a similar system throughout the English-speaking Caribbean. It's based on a colonial past, the British system. So most of these countries would have inherited a British education system. And children enter school officially, formally I should say, at age 5. Formally. They enter kindergarten and they leave school by 16 plus in what we call grade 11 or what we call Form 5. That's high school. So they spend some 7 years in the elementary school and another 5 years in what we call high school. Now we're not like Taiwan and the United States. Our secondary schools generally run 5 years. So you enter in grade 7 and you exit in grade 11. Of course, some of these schools also have what you call a sixth form. But compulsory school age in Saint Lucia by the law is if you're 15, your parents do not have to say why you're not at school. Once you're 15, your parents have no responsibility to the state to say that you ought not be at school. But any child below the age of 15, the parent could be jailed or prosecuted for not having their children in school. I don't know if there's a mandatory age in Taiwan, but at 15, you don't have to be in school. That's grade 9 by the time you're 14, 15. Approximately 75% of children enter the early childhood education sector at about 2 years old. About 75%. And early childhood education is dominated by private people in Saint Lucia. 90% of that sector is owned by private enterprise. Now, what that means is not good because the best years for education is early. In fact, if I was trying to remember the name of the economist who wrote, and he's showing that if your children go to preschool, the country will do a lot better with its GDP because the earlier you introduce them to education, the better. Now, when 90% is private owned, it means that you need to have money to get to preschool. And I don't know, I'm going to find out what the Taiwan situation is of preschool. So about 60% of the students have access. There are about 40% of the children who do not have access to early stimulation. Our primary schools, you can tell in Saint Lucia, because Saint Lucia was a big French country, a lot of the schools were Roman Catholic schools. The school is church-based schools, even if it was not Roman Catholic, but Anglican or Methodist or Seventh-day Adventist. The government actually had its first school in 1972, I think, the government of Saint Lucia, because the church schools dominate. So most Saint Lucians have been to a church school. I think, yeah, but you must agree, I must tell you, between the 1950s, 60s, a lot of Saint Lucian children never went to school. For example, my father does not know what the inside of a school looks like because he didn't have that privilege to go to school because school was for those who could afford it. And so that's why when people like me, he made that opportunity to make sure I get to school. I have to appreciate the fact that even if he did not get an education, but he's saying, my child is going to get that opportunity. Primary school, St. Lucia's situation is very unique in that the country is English speaking by 1863 because St. Lucia had a lot of wars between the British and the French. 14 times, 7 times English, 7 times French. Today the French, the King of France is the head of state. Tomorrow, the King of Great Britain. So they fought until about 1863, and they said, okay, let's give the British, St. Lucia to the British, and therefore St. Lucia became a British colony eventually in 1863. But the point is that you might see a lot of people in St. Lucia, but they cannot speak English up to the 1960s, 70s, because the Creole, the French Creole, was what was their way of speaking. English was only for those who went to school and those who had money. When they call you a gentleman, gentleman means you had money and property. If you didn't have money, that's true, you might look to see. Gentleman means, when you had the British talking about in the parliament, the kind gentleman across there, he has money and property, because those who didn't have money and property were not called gentlemen. The children of slaves could not be. And that may be for another time when they invite me here in NTU. Although I know this graph, and Bernice seemed to be a good mathematics student, but the graph is really showing how St. Lucia, for about 24%, by 1970, only 24% of St. Lucians could get into a secondary school. And today, everybody can go. In a period of just about 52 years, you make way for everybody. Because when I went to secondary school, just about 24% could get in. And the way you got in, you had to have either one of these. You had a name. So you belong to a particular social class. So your name said who you are. Or you were a member of the church. Or your family had property. Or you wrote an exam and you're fortunate to pass. Now, of course, everybody passes sometimes. But it depends on who they want to take into the schools. I'm sure NTU doesn't do these things. You come on merit, right? Oh, of course. So, let's move. Tertiary education, approximately 18% of the St. Lucian students who finish secondary school have access to tertiary education. Now, you might say, well, there's a lot. But the point is, access is one issue in terms of education, but the issue of affordability is the next issue. Because you might have access, but you cannot make it because you don't have the money to go. I have looked at Taiwan's tuition fees, and I must tell you, you have some of the lowest tuition fees in the world. And one of the things I like about Taiwan, I read a paper from the president of the examination or the control, Lian. It's two things I noticed about Taiwan. One, Taiwan is an open democracy, but also Taiwan realizes that two things are almost free in Taiwan: healthcare and education. That is important. Do not take these things for granted, young people. There are a lot of people in the world who want access to education and they want access to health. Without good health, your country cannot survive. There's only really one community college in St. Lucia called the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. It can only take so many students. And therefore, of course, there are few American schools. The Americans always have schools in different parts of the world. You have schools like medical schools, but again, medical schools are expensive. Anybody wanting to do medicine, no, in the Caribbean, you would have to begin to think of at least $150,000 US. That's the bottom line. It will cost anywhere between $200,000 US and $300,000 US to attain a medical degree in the Caribbean or in the United States. So those of you thinking about medicine, Do it quickly because the world needs doctors, yes. The United States in particular, it's always looking for doctors. And they like to know they don't have to be the one to train you, but they will just be waiting. Thank you very much. You have been trained and we accept you. These are just the grade levels I put up here for you to see. Kindergarten, 5 years, down to Form 5, which is about 16 years. That's the ages in Saint Lucia, principally because every child, once you turn 5, of course, some very special people send their children in by age 4. They have privilege. And then, in the Saint Lucia education system, there are 4 key stages for assessment to know where you are at. So you enter at age 5. That's what they call kindergarten. And in the 3rd year, grade 2, there is what we call a minimum standards test. Now, these minimum standard tests, what they're really supposed to do, but they never really do them because we always use some other reason for these exams. We always want to label schools. Once you give exams, you want to know where they place. By right, the exam is supposed to find out, is the child at least 60% is able to do the work of the curriculum at the level of about 60%. So the first key stage is grade 2, the next key stage is grade 4, and then we have what we call a common primary exit assessment run by the Caribbean Examination Council. Every child who enters grade 6 will have to take that exam to know which of the secondary schools he or she will be placed in. Now that means also this exam is a common exam for all the countries in the Caribbean. What it does for us in the Caribbean is that if you leave St. Vincent and you come to St. Lucia, we don't have to give you another exam. We already know where you are because this is a standardized exam for the Caribbean. So we already know where you are at. We waste no time. We can put a child into our system from any of the English-speaking Caribbean who takes the exam. And of course, grade 9 is another assessment that we use. So Saint Lucia and the British love exams, just like the Asians. Yeah, you love exams. Saint Lucia Education Act, there's an act that controls the education system. And as a minister, I had to know that act. I always carried a copy of it with me everywhere I went. Because you need to know what your responsibility is under the Education Act. And everybody is a stakeholder in education. Everybody is. Down from the minister to the permanent secretary. The permanent secretary in most countries is just the person who heads the ministry. Because the minister is not a civil servant. He's a politician in these countries. And therefore, the permanent secretary is the person who's accountable to the government of St. Lucia for what's happening. The minister simply has to set policy, and the permanent secretary will get the rest of the ministry doing the work. And of course, you have a chief education officer, and other education officers, principals, teachers, students, parents. Everybody's rights under the Education Act is, you can read it, what your responsibility is. If a child is suspended, what it says. How can you re-enter the school? It's an act that tells us how to control our education system. Now, I want to just quickly now move to the Caribbean. The Caribbean has some good institutions. We are a region that believes in cooperation. So when, for example, in 1948, the British set up what they call University College of the West Indies in Jamaica. It was a college of the University of London. And they set it up in Jamaica because it's supposed to serve all the people of the British English-speaking Caribbean, and it was headquartered in Jamaica. So one college, 1948. That is 74 years ago. Today it's called University of the West Indies. It has been called University of the West Indies since 1962. This is an institution that serves 17 English-speaking countries. Of course, one of the things I want NTU to do, and I'll say that at the end, is to send the students for a semester at UWI. That's how you are going to interact with your allies in the Caribbean. Because our students are already here. But we need some of you to be down in the Caribbean because the education system is of a high quality. UWI ranks very high in the tables also. Now, so UWI, University of the West Indies, is one institution. This one, the Caribbean Examination Council, it is the organization, an institution that is set up since 1972 by the governments of what you see there. I have CARICOM, the Caribbean Common Market. The same way you have the EU with a common market, the Caribbean countries have its own common market. We don't have a single currency because Jamaica has its own currency, Guyana has its own currency, Barbados has its own currency, but Bahamas has its own currency, Belize has its own currency, Trinidad and Tobago has its own currency, but 7 of the islands have $1, which is called the Eastern Caribbean dollar. But together, we come together and we form CARICOM. And CARICOM set up the Caribbean Examination Council. Our history is such that because we are British, we took everything out of Great Britain. So we wrote the General Certificate Examination coming out of the University of London or University of Cambridge. But could you imagine you telling a Saint Lucian student who lives in the tropics to write the same essays in English as a child in Liverpool? So the first exam, you go there and one of the topics is a cold winter's night. Now how is the child able to write an essay? He's already disadvantaged. How can he write an essay about a cold winter's night when he has never faced a winter? So you can understand some of the reasons why we had to have our own examination system. Because we want to make it appropriate to us. And we have the quality to do that. In fact, the Caribbean Examination Council, its certificates are accepted by every school in the United States, every school in the UK. Well, and therefore, because the Caribbean students have been taught in English throughout their school journey. So the Caribbean Examination Council has a suite of exams. Well, you can see the countries. There are 16 participating countries: Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados. I'm sure you heard of Barbados maybe in the last year. Barbados is the most recent country to become a republic by abandoning the king. Well, it was the queen then. It says we no longer want the Queen of England to represent us. We want our own people to represent us. So they said, we want to be a republic, and to the Barbados is a republic. The head of state is a Barbadian. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saint Lucia, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. All these are countries that are part of CARICOM. And they are part also of the CXC, the Caribbean Examination Council. Sorry? Let's just quickly move in. Of course, the first exams were offered in 1979, so we're not talking about yesterday. It has been going on for a while, and we have different exams. For example, at the end of secondary school, students write the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate exams. And that means they're preparing. You can use that qualification to go into university, or you can use it to go into the world of work. But they also write the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Exam. Now, I don't know how much you know about the GCE exams, the General Certificate of Education run by the British system. Our examinations are equivalent to the British system. In fact, I think sometimes our system is even better. And the thing about West Indians, and it's not a boast, West Indians can survive at any institution anywhere in the world. Anyone, whether it's Harvard, Yale, Cambridge. In fact, those of us who are here are examples of that. I'm a graduate of Cambridge. It's not because of Cambridge I am who I am. I am who I am because of the system in the Caribbean, it had me properly educated so I can stand anywhere and know that I have been prepared to face the world, not just Saint Lucia. So when I became a student in New Zealand and they gave me to do mathematics classes for undergraduate students, they know that I'm coming, I'm ready to do it. And I'm saying the same thing for you, that as you move, you're not preparing for Taiwan only, you're preparing for the world. So if you want, have a look at what the Caribbean Examination Council is, because a lot of the students who are here in Taiwan, they have these qualifications. I think I know of 6 Saint Lucians at NTU, but most of them are in engineering. Our students, they come here for engineering because they know that Taiwan has very good quality engineering programs, and ICT is one of the strong points of the Taiwanese system, and therefore, when our students come here, they come for engineering, medicine, they'll come for ICT. So I'm just saying, you may come across a Saint Lucian student at some point. I think I'm told that somebody in your department is a Saint Lucian. Right. So I would advise, get on to look at the Caribbean Examination Council. Get to know something about the people you will come across in the next few years. Because St. Lucia alone has about 150 students here. St. Vincent has its own number. So you must have at least, I would want to think, at least 600 Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean students in Taiwan at the moment. And they are found throughout the different universities in Taiwan. But I know St. Lucia has at least six students here at NTU. But most of them are they're in engineering. They wouldn't have time to get up, to get the heads of the engineering books to come to see us, right? But I want to advise you, have a look at the CXC. Well, you can see where the CXC exam, the CPE I talked about, the Caribbean Primary Exit, is at grade 6. There's another exam at grade 9, the CSEC at grade 11, the CAPE at grade 12 plus, the Caribbean Vocational Qualification, you can do it also, and then CXC has an associate degree, because right now, the same way you have AP, those of you who did AP, Advanced Placement, if you go into university for Advanced Placement, you may not have to take a particular course. The CXC associate degree allows the student to get a year or 2 years of university. They already can go into their third and fourth years. And that's a problem, because it means that some children cannot access it because they do not have the money to access it. So school feeding is important. And it's very hard to maintain the school plant in the Caribbean, because some of the school plant is old and we have not been able to keep them up to the level that we would want. For example, after the trough of 2013, one of the things the World Bank told us is try to get schools off the ground in the sense that at least 2 meters above, because when you have flooding, a lot of damage to our schools. Same thing is true in our secondary education. There is no feeding program in our secondary schools, but we need to, because a lot of children are going to secondary school and they do not have a meal. And so that's one of the challenges that we face. You come from a country where you have been blessed. Some of you, they get the milk and I don't want milk. I know you don't want what they're given because you have access to money and other things. But their children are in Pakistan or in the Caribbean, so many places in the world, they are looking for a meal to enhance their education. The world had a plan, and they said by 2015, we wanted to make sure everybody got to the Millennium Development Goals. You remember that? You've heard of it? The Millennium Development Goals? I just wanted to put it up for you to see. St. Lucia's done well. Most of the countries of the Caribbean have done well in trying to meet these needs. One of them was universal primary education. Of course, most countries in the Caribbean already have universal primary education. In fact, almost every country in the Caribbean has universal secondary education. Taiwan has probably, you have access. Everybody can get access to universal tertiary. But I understand you, just about 25%, which is very good. 25% of Taiwanese have undergraduate degrees. And that's important because the system of education will tell us how your country is doing in certain indices. So we've met these by and large. We've reduced child mortality. There's still a lot of children dying in some places in the world, too many. We've met most of these. But now, the ones the world is looking about is the Sustainable Development Goals. And for us, there are 3 of them really. I think if we're thinking about, all of them are important. But you see good health and well-being, the 3rd goal there, that's important to us because healthcare is an issue in the Caribbean. The next one is quality education, because we must continue to provide our people with quality education so they can compete anywhere in the world. And I think, I see 13, climate action, yes, that's important for all of us. And the 17, partnerships for the goals. We have to meet all of these as a people in the world. Taiwan must do its part, Saint Lucia must do its part. I'm going to push till we can end. I was just making a point because I'm a teacher. Teacher quality is a necessary factor for the realization of quality education. If you don't have good teachers, the education system cannot function. The biggest factor in terms of quality of education is the teacher quality. And teacher quality means, do your teachers have the content? Do they know how to present the information to students? Whenever I taught, anytime the class does badly, I know it has to be about me. Because I was always teaching at a school, the top school for boys in the country. If they fail, it's me. Because they have lots of potential. So teacher quality, that's why NTU will always look to see if it can keep its best professors. I know I heard in a dinner 2 nights ago, you are fighting to keep, sometimes some places give professors 3 times more. Because money is what makes the world function. And people will take their services to where they get more pay, isn't it? Why do you think you're at university, most of you? You want a good job. And whoever is going to give you the best package, that's where you give your services. Isn't that true? Yes, because some of you have small loads to pay also. Let's see if we can end. It says education is a human right, which is true. The United Nations Charter, Article 26 says it is a right. Every child has a right to an education. And access to education is not a privilege, it is a right. That's what the Global Partnership for Education says. It is not a privilege. Education cannot be a privilege. You have a right to knowledge. If we want the world to be better, we have to give its citizens an education. And I'm really ending for true. Saint Lucia, as the Minister for Education, I can tell you, about 90% of our budget for education went into salaries and other things like this. And just about 5%, 6% was left to do some of the things you really want to do. Now the GPE, which is the Global Partnership for Education that you saw me just quote a little earlier, they said any country who can spend between 5 and 12% of its GDP on education is doing well. Now I know St. Vincent is, St. Lucia is doing, most of us are spending somewhere between 5 and 8% of our GDP on education. Taiwan might just be doing about 12%. Now that's good. We're behind you. 4% is a lot, big difference. But what I'm saying is, these small countries have challenges, and education must be met. The cost of education has to be met, but there are other needs to meet also. Many persons keep stating that education is expensive. However, Professor Romero Jr. puts it in context for us. He says, To those who claim that education is expensive, I have a very simple message. Try ignorance. Ignorance is more expensive. When people don't know, a lot of mistakes happen. So the more you can educate a population, the better off you are as a country, because you know that if your population is educated, the people will make less mistakes with certain issues. If you have a well-educated population, when people present themselves as politicians to run the country, you can tell who you want to run the country. Some places do it badly. But by and large, I think Taiwan will always make the right decision as to who should lead Taiwan. And that's your choice, not mine. I'm not Taiwanese, I can't vote here. In Saint Lucia, the voting age is 18. I think in Taiwan it's 21. No. There's going to be a referendum. I'm aware of that. It will be good. 18-year-olds should have a right to make that decision because you are at university by then. You should be able to say, these are the people I want to vote for. I know Taiwan will eventually get there. 21 is a bit steep. 18 is a good time. By then you are thinking properly. Education is that's Nelson Mandela who says, education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. The education you are getting here at NTU, you are going to change the world. One of you is going to come up with some drug probably that will solve a problem in the world. One of you is going to come up with some invention, some innovation that will save humanity. You may not think about it now, but the reason you're at NTU is preparing you for the future. You are Taiwan's best chance of survival. If you don't make it, Taiwan cannot make it. That's why Taiwan is investing all of this money into your education. But very quickly as I end, we need to ask Taiwan to do some things with us. Help us. Saint Lucia spent 4.4% of its GDP, according to the World Bank, on fuel imports in 2020. Some of these funds could be channeled to other critical sectors like education and health. We need Taiwan to explore with us geothermal potential for electricity generation from our sulfur spring in Soufrière. You know, we have these huge boiling pots in Saint Lucia. It is steam and energy that is trapped underneath, between the surface of the earth. And it's there to be used, clean energy. But you can use countries like Taiwan to partner with us. The investment in geothermal energy will not only help with our contribution to the climate change action plan, but will help in reducing the cost of energy for citizens and spur economic development in our country. Also, we need to harness the abundant solar energy that we have. I have read that Taiwan, you have so many innovative projects in how solar energy could be used. We need Taiwanese investment in these areas. We have an abundance of sunlight throughout the year. Almost 12 hours of sunlight right throughout the year, from 6 to 6. And we need Taiwan, young people like you, to invest with us. We talk about the green economy. You can read for yourself. And the blue economy. Taiwan has a lot of marine, and a big marine environment. The Caribbean has a big marine environment also. We need to harness that resource. And again, we can do with the expertise of Taiwan. Taiwan, you've done certain things, and you are doing certain things well, and you can help us. These are just telling you how the countries that have given us some of the assistance in higher education. Today, Taiwan is one of our biggest benefactor in how our students are going to be educated. So we say thank you to Taiwan, because all these countries, a lot of them are saying, you've reached a stage we can't continue giving you. We have other countries we need to look at. That's just a house of assembly in St. Lucia, a small House of 17 elected members. I'm saying thank you to the Republic of China, Taiwan, for the wonderful and productive opportunities afforded to Saint Lucia and St. Vincent and other countries through MOFA and ICDF. You give us undergraduate programs, graduate degree programs, short-term courses in several and varied areas like health, agriculture, ICT, disaster preparedness through ICDF Taiwan. I hope you know ICDF Taiwan. But we have some concerns. My first concern is I am not happy with how our students have been treated in Taiwan in terms of their English-speaking abilities. Taiwan always says, we need you to take a test of English as a second language, as a first language. English is our first language. We do not have a problem writing in English. And therefore, we think by now, the schools in Taiwan should say, we do not need West Indian or Caribbean students to take that exam because it's a waste of resources. Our students must pay money. They have to waste time in taking these exams. Our students are actually teaching English here. A lot of Saint Lucian, Vincentian, English-speaking Caribbean students are teaching English in your schools. Then why are they taking English exams? And I want to say I'm very happy with seeing what President Tai is doing with her 2030 vision. She wants to make Taiwan a bilingual country by 2030. And we can assist you to do that because our students will teach English. In fact, I was feeling sorry for the Kittian students. Prime Minister said yesterday he wants the students from St. Kitts to give free English tuition. Every child who comes, every student who comes from St. Kitts, he's going to encourage them to give free tuition. Well, of course, you know, tutoring. Well, the point is the students are going to say, what? But anyway, that's one way we can do it. We can help you. And I agree with him. Because when you have this army of young people throughout the English-speaking Caribbean down here, teaching English, you are going to become a bilingual country in a very short space of time. So I really think NTU, I'm not saying you are doing it, I doubt NTU is doing that. So let's say NTU is not doing this, so NTU is going to say, from now on, all English-speaking Caribbean countries, no test for English as foreign language. You know, this is not useful for you because your students are English speakers. And I'm very pleased that I'm here. I know I've taken a long time, but I thought it was important to introduce you to a number of things. Maybe at some point you may not invite me again, but you may want to invite me to have another discussion. Let me thank you for having listened. You look like you at least engaged. So I'm happy that you can check out the Caribbean, go for a cruise, encourage your parents to go. I hope NTU will find it to go to MOFA and to say, can you send some of our professors down to UWI, University of the West Indies, to do a fellowship for 6 months? Because in that way, with 7 of your allies in the Caribbean, you need to know the Caribbean well. And the way you get to know people well is when you live with them. I want to thank you for your time.
Okay, well, so thank Dr. Lewis for the wonderful talk. And he is not only the mathematics teacher, but is a very good teacher.
Thank you.
Saint Lucia. So, as a representative of the Office of International Affairs in NTU, actually, we maybe Joseph can add more on, but what I know is actually for the international student, actually, we require some kind of language level. But if that is from the English speaking country, we don't need a TOEFL. So if that is the case in St. Lucia, so I'm not quite sure. That is not a deal.
Well, we were happy to hear NTU is not in that group.
Okay. So that's good.
Hello.
Hi.
So good afternoon. My name is Marcella I'm an exchange student from Indonesia. And I saw that the number of students going for tertiary education needs to be improved, of course. So does the Saint Lucian government have like a program to support the students? Because like the US have like the student loans and Indonesia also have like some sort of subsidy program too. So I'm asking if Saint Lucian government has one too.
The best way I'll answer this question, yes, we do. Almost all the governments in the Caribbean, I was just speaking to, it was your minister counselor. But all the governments do. For example, we have what you call open campus of the University of West Indies. The governments of these countries in the Caribbean, they pay about almost 80% of the cost for the students. Plus, we have students who may be going to Cuba. The government will give them a stipend. We also have, we pay what is called economic cost for our students. So if a university is in Barbados, for example, the government of St. Vincent will pay a particular portion of the students. There are many different programs. And at different times, the governments will open up. For example, St. Vincent, when I was academic dean at Monroe College, that's the one I was talking about. When I was academic dean at Monroe College, St. Vincent paid for at least 20 of their students to be doing a degree program in St. Lucia. So the governments do, yes. But as you rightly said, and we need to do more. And that's why Taiwan is assisting us, because the world is saying the Latin America and the Caribbean has the lowest engagement in tertiary education in the world, one of the lowest engagements. And that's why we need to have more programs like what you're saying.
Is the program sort of like there's only a limited students who are able to get that, or like if you apply, you automatically get it?
If you apply and you have the qualification, she was asking, do the students apply, you will get automatically entrance. Most of the students, they will apply, they have the qualification. As I said earlier, the biggest issue for us is finance. It's finance everywhere in the world. But for some of, like if I were in Taiwan, when I looked at the tuition fee, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really made for heaven. Because a student could say, I can actually save that money over a shorter period of time. So there are a lot of students. The West Indian student or Caribbean student has an insatiable appetite for education. There's no doubt about it. But the biggest problem is finance. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your question. And I have a question. The Saint Lucia have made a great effort in giving quality education. So maybe more and more students can have the ability to study abroad. And how can the government attract the student back to Saint Lucia to work to avoid the graduate? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you can tell that you are well situated. You're doing your reading well in that field. Yeah, the brain drain is the biggest problem for small islands like ours. In fact, I am almost certain I can say maybe approximately 80% of the people who have studied outside of the Caribbean do not come back because they're attracted. For example, the United States, I said it earlier, the United States will pick up all the doctors that you train because it's easier for them that they've already. Now, one of the things I'm going to say, it's a difficult place to maneuver. When I was minister, the Prime Minister said to me, while we have a policy asking our students to come back, but you cannot guarantee these students that when they come back, there will be some work for them. So he said to me, ignore the policy in your head because it's on paper, but you ignore it because a Saint Lucian student, and I suppose St. Vincent will say the same thing, will make a contribution anywhere he or she is in the world. What we want is to make sure we don't leave our people without an education. So for us, while we like some of them to come back, but if they don't come back, we know they're making a contribution to the world, and they send a lot of remittances to the country. Sometimes during the COVID period, a huge chunk of your income comes out of the UK or the United States because your people in this country send money to their family to take care of them. So we understand that, but we don't have a policy to say we'll try to bring everybody back. We hope there are a few of them who are bounded to the country, they'll come back, but we cannot guarantee everybody employment. But thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to add to that because our situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is very similar to St. Lucia, as Ambassador Lois has been saying all afternoon. There's also the situation with regard to knowledge transfer. There is knowledge transfer, particularly now with ICT, and that often helps. Okay, there are a number of ways in which the knowledge can still be transferred and sent back to our countries, because the world really is very much smaller now. So in a way, that helps to undermine the notion of a massive brain drain.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bowman.
Hello, my name is Chelsea, and I'm from the Department of Psychology, and I'm from Indonesia. So I think Indonesia actually has a lot to learn from Saint Lucia, because we also have plenty of issues with education that has not been resolved yet. So my question is, between the lack of accessibility of early childhood education and between that and higher education accessibility, which one is the bigger issue? Which one takes bigger priority?
I can tell you that Chelsea is going to be one politician, serious politician, because that's a big question. Which one is the bigger? But Chelsea, if I were to say, I would be quite honest with you, I think early childhood education, I would say, would be a priority, because I just don't remember the name of the individual. I'll have to send it to a professor. There's an individual who had done a lot of studies. He's at the World Bank, he's a professor. He's showing that if you provide early childhood education, your children, they will have, on that learning curve, they will do a lot better. The GDP of the country will improve. So I must agree, but if I were doing one thing, I would put the money in early childhood education. If I had $1 and I had to spend an amount, I'd say 70% in early education and 30% in higher education. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.